In the winter of 1923, Denver, Colorado lay blanketed under a thick, suffocating layer of snow. Streets were emptied as residents huddled indoors, avoiding the bitter cold, but some stayed inside for reasons darker than weather. For weeks, townsfolk had been found dead in their homes, their bodies eerily pale and drained of blood. A shadow had fallen over the city, and only the boldest whispered of a strange, dark force moving through Denver, feeding on the weak and growing stronger by the night. Richard O'Connor, an Irish priest who'd come to Denver's St. Mary's Parish for a quiet posting, soon learned of the horrors plaguing the city. An enigmatic figure himself, Richard was no ordinary priest. He had been trained in the ways of ancient rites, had faced evil beyond what most could imagine. But even he felt the chill of fear when he first heard of the city's new affliction. This was no ordinary evil. It was the work of vampires. Richard began his investigation quietly, reaching out to those few who had survived close encounters with the creatures. He pieced together a dark tale. A cabal of vampires, recently arrived in the city, had set their sights on Denver, using the heavy winter storms as cover to take control of the people and drain the city's life. Their leader, known only as Valentino, was said to have once been a figure of high society, now transformed into a creature of the night, ruthless and ancient, armed with holy water, silver crucifixes, and an old family relic, a dagger blessed by an Irish Saint Richard prepared to confront the vampires. His first encounter came late one night. While he patrolled near Union Station, through the thick snow, he saw the vampires cornering a young woman. Without hesitation, he stepped into the fray, throwing holy water that sizzled as it struck their skin, sending the creatures fleeing. But he knew these minor skirmishes would not be enough. He needed to find their lair and confront Valentino himself. As days passed, Richard's determination grew. His search led him to the heart of the city, to an abandoned mansion once home to a wealthy family who had mysteriously disappeared. Rumors had swirled about this place for months, of lights flickering at night and figures moving behind the boarded windows. Richard suspected it was where Valentino and his followers nested during the day, resting in shadowed rooms as they prepared for their nightly hunts. In the dead of night, Richard entered the mansion. The air was thick with a stale and natural cold. Every corner seemed to whisper of ancient sins, of lives drained and families destroyed. As he crept through the rooms, he finally came to a grand, decayed ballroom. There, on a makeshift throne draped in velvet, sat Valentino, flanked by his most loyal followers. Valentino greeted him with a smile, his face unnaturally handsome yet horrifying, his eyes glowing red in the dim light. "Father O'Connor," Valentino drawled, "come to bless our gathering."
"Father O'Connor," Valentino drawled, "come to bless our gathering, have you?" Richard lifted his cross, his voice steady. "You've haunted this city long enough. Tonight, it ends." Valentino laughed, his laugh echoing through the cavernous room. "Do you think your God will save you here? Look around. I own Denver now. The people are mine to feed on, as I please." But Richard was undeterred. He reached into his coat and withdrew the blessed dagger, holding it aloft. Valentino's smile faded as he realized what Richard held: a weapon infused with an ancient power that could wound even the oldest of vampires. The battle that followed was fierce and brutal. Richard fought with every ounce of his strength and faith, slashing at the vampires as they lunged for him. He managed to wound several of Valentino's followers, their bodies crumbling to ash as the dagger met their hearts. Valentino himself fought with a ferocity that seemed unstoppable, his strength otherworldly as he cornered Richard, knocking the cross from his hand. Yet Richard, wounded but unyielding, finally drove the blessed dagger deep into Valentino's heart, reciting an ancient prayer as he did. Valentino let out a scream that shattered the silence of the mansion, a howl of pure agony as his body began to disintegrate, dissolving into a pile of ash that scattered across the floor. With Valentino's death, the snow seemed to lighten, the unnatural darkness lifted from the city. Denver slowly began to heal, the people emerging cautiously from their homes, unaware of the true nature of the terror that had gripped them. But Richard knew that his work was not done. He stayed for some time, watching, ensuring that none of Valentino's followers returned. Years later, Denver would remember that brutal winter as the coldest in history. But only a few would ever know the full truth, that an Irish priest had saved them from a darkness older and colder than any winter storm.